They say money can't buy happiness, but it turns out it can buy something far more dangerous: the complete destruction of your family. My name is Kalira Barnes, and this is the story of how my parents declared me mentally unfit to steal my $2 million inheritance, and how, 10 years later, I foreclosed on their entire lives. My father is Rowan Barnes, a charming man with expensive tastes and a gambling addiction he thought nobody noticed. My mother is Isolde Barnes, beautiful, cold, and capable of convincing anyone of anything, including a judge that their own daughter was insane. And then there was my grandfather, Theodore Whitmore, the only person who ever truly loved me. He built a real estate empire from nothing, and when he died, he left it all to me instead of them. That decision cost me everything. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. October rain hammered against the windows of my grandfather's study, the room where Theodore Whitmore had spent 40 years building his fortune, one property at a time. Now it smelled like old leather and grief. I was 17, just 3 weeks shy of 18. 3 days earlier, I'd found Grandpa Theo collapsed in his rose garden, pruning shears still clutched in his hand. The doctors said it was a massive stroke. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. I hadn't stopped crying since. Now I sat across from my parents and a stern-faced attorney named William Shepard, waiting to hear Grandpa's final wishes. Rowan, my father, perched on the edge of his seat, eyes bloodshot. But not from grief. He'd been at the casino until 4 a.m, even with the funeral barely over. Isolde, my mother, looked like a Chanel-clad statue, her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. Shall we begin? William Shepard opened a thick leather portfolio. His voice was grave. This is the last will and testament of Theodore James Whitmore, drafted on September 3rd, 2014, just 6 weeks before his passing. 6 weeks? Rowan lurched forward. Dad changed his will without telling me? Mr. Whitmore had every legal right to do so. Shepard adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses. Now, if I may continue. The attorney read through the preliminary sections. Small bequests to the housekeeper, the gardener, local charities. Rowan shook his head at each one, his large hands gripping the armrests tighter and tighter. Then, Shepard paused. He looked up, his eyes landing first on me, then shifting to my parents. The remainder of the estate, including the Whitmore estate property, investment portfolio, and a trust fund valued at $2 million, Mr. Whitmore leaves to his granddaughter, Kalira Margaret Barnes. Silence. Then Isolde gasped. What? The conditions are as follows, Shepard continued, his voice steady. Kalira will assume full control of the trust fund on her 18th birthday, November 15th, 2014. Until that time, First National Bank of Connecticut will manage the assets as trustee. This is insane! Rowan shot to his feet, his chair scraping backward. He cut out his only son, the man who lived with him for 20 years, to give money to a child who's not even legally an adult. Mr. Whitmore was very clear about his wishes. Shepard interrupted, closing the portfolio. He also left a letter for Miss Kalira. He slid an envelope across the desk. My hands trembled as I took it. My grandfather's familiar handwriting spelled out my name in elegant script. Isolde stood, her voice dripping with venom. We'll contest this. Legally, a will can be challenged if Theodore wasn't of sound mind when he signed it. I was present when Mr. Whitmore signed this document, Mrs. Barnes. He was completely lucid and certain of his decision. Shepard stood as well. You have 30 days to vacate the Whitmore estate. Kalira will inherit the property. That girl... Rowan pointed at me, something dangerous flashing in his eyes. Manipulated an old man. She's not even old enough to vote, but now she's richer than I am? I felt everyone's eyes on me. I wanted to say something, anything, to defend myself. But my throat was dry. All I could do was clutch the envelope, feeling the weight of my grandfather's final words. Shepard gathered his things. This meeting is adjourned. If you wish to contest the will, please contact my office through your attorney. After he left, Rowan turned to me. His voice dropped to something quiet and terrifying. What did you do to him? What did you say? I didn't do anything. $2 million, Isolde whispered, stepping closer. He owed us that money. He was Rowan's father. We took care of him. You visited him once in 3 years. The words burst out of me. I was the one who sat with him every day. I read to him, played chess with him. The slap snapped my head sideways. Isolde withdrew her hand, her red nails gleaming. Don't you ever lecture me about being a mother, Kalira. You're a spoiled brat. And now you have $2 million to spoil you even more. Rowan placed a hand on Isolde's shoulder. She's not 18 yet. That's a whole month. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. A lot can change in a month. They left the room, leaving me alone with my grandfather's letter. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. Grandpa Theo's letter. My dearest Kalira, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I didn't have more time. There was so much more I wanted to teach you. About business, about life, about how to survive in this world without losing your soul. I'm leaving you everything not because you're perfect, but because you're good. In a family where greed has become hereditary, you're the only thing left that's pure. Don't let them take that from you. Your parents will be angry. They'll feel betrayed. But I can't trust them with this money. I've watched them gamble. I've paid debts they thought I didn't know about. If I left them this money, it would be gone in a year. Be wise, Kalira. Be patient. Don't let anyone, not even your parents, convince you that you don't deserve this. You deserve everything. And I will always be proud of you. With all my love, Grandpa Theo. I folded the letter carefully, tears blurring my vision. I could hear my parents arguing downstairs, voices rising, furniture scraping. I woke up on the morning of my 18th birthday with a feeling I couldn't name, something between hope and dread. A month had passed since the will reading, a month that felt like living in a war zone. Rowan and Isolde had moved into a Hartford hotel but returned daily to pack their things, which really meant cataloging assets. I'd caught Isolde photographing antiques, Rowan measuring paintings. Today, I was supposed to go to First National Bank with William Shepard to sign the final papers. Today, the trust fund would become mine. The house would become mine. My future would become my own. But my head felt foggy. I'd been having trouble sleeping, not from anxiety, but from something else. My body felt strange, like I was trying to swim through syrup. I poured myself coffee from the kitchen machine. As I raised the mug to my lips, I noticed my hand trembling. Just nerves, I told myself. Today, everything changes. The doorbell rang. I looked out the window. A black sedan sat in the driveway. 2 men in suits stood at the door. One of them held a folder. I opened the door a crack. Yes? Kalira Barnes? The older man, salt and pepper hair, expressionless face, asked. Yes. My name is Wade Patterson. I'm a court-appointed conservator. He held out a sheaf of papers. This is a court order. Your parents have filed for emergency conservatorship, citing concerns about your mental health. There's a hearing at 10 o'clock this morning. We're here to escort you. The world tilted. What? No, there's been a mistake. There's no mistake, Miss Barnes. Patterson pushed the door wider. According to Connecticut law, an emergency petition can be granted if there's imminent risk. Your doctor, Dr. Preston Hayes, has provided evidence that you're experiencing a severe mental health crisis following your grandfather's death. What doctor? I don't have a doctor. I backed away. The second man, younger, with cold eyes, stepped inside. Miss Barnes, resisting will only make this worse. I'm not resisting anything. I'm supposed to go to the bank. I have an appointment. I turned to run, but my head spun. My legs wouldn't obey. I stumbled on the stairs, collapsing. Patterson caught me before I hit the ground. Are you all right? No. Something is very wrong. My head. My body. Maybe you should sit down, Patterson said, guiding me to the sofa. We'll leave in 10 minutes. And then I saw them. Rowan and Isolde emerged from the back hallway. They'd been here the whole morning. In my house. With keys. Baby, Isolde said, her voice honey over razors. We're just worried about you. After Grandpa died, you haven't been yourself. What did you give me? The words came out slurred. What did you put in my coffee? Rowan knelt down. You're being paranoid, Kalira. That's one of the symptoms. Dr. Hayes explained it to us. I don't know anyone named Dr. Hayes. I tried to stand, but my body refused. Sedatives. They drugged me. The coffee. I'd left it unattended for just a minute. That's all they needed. It's time to go, Patterson said. The court is waiting. They escorted me to the car, me in my pajamas wearing only slippers, and drove me away. I saw neighbors peeking through curtains. I wanted to scream, to tell them this was wrong, that this was fraud. But I couldn't make my words form sentences. The courtroom was a blur. I remember fragments. Rowan on the witness stand, tears streaming down his face. My daughter has changed since Dad died. She talks about things that aren't real. She hurts herself. Isolde presenting evidence. Photographs taken over the past month. Me with bruises on my arms from accidentally walking into a door. Me looking dazed in one photo, taken right after I'd cried myself to sleep. A man I'd never seen before, Dr. Preston Hayes, they called him, testifying that he'd met with me 3 times in the past month. He described me as unstable, potentially self-destructive, experiencing dissociation from reality. I tried to speak. I tried to tell the judge that I'd never met this man, that my parents had drugged me, that this was about money. But my words came out garbled, incoherent. The judge looked at me with pity. Miss Barnes, the judge said, I know this is a difficult time, but based on the evidence presented, and in your best interest, I'm granting temporary conservatorship to Rowan and Isolde Barnes, supervised by Wade Patterson. No, I whispered. Please don't. You'll be transferred to Meadowbrook Wellness Center for treatment. The judge continued. We'll review your case in 90 days. No bank, no William Shepard, no freedom, just the trap they'd been building for a month, activated on the exact day I was supposed to claim my inheritance. As they led me out of the courtroom, Rowan leaned close and whispered in my ear, Your $2 million belongs to us now, Kalira, and you'll stay in that facility until we decide to let you out. If you're smart, maybe just a few years. I wanted to fight. I wanted to scream. But the drugs had won. The world faded to black. I woke up in a white room. White walls. White floors. Even the door was white, and it had no handle on the inside. I was lying on a hard bed with a thin blanket. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A sign on the wall read, Meadowbrook Wellness Center. Healing through discipline. Wellness Center, I thought bitterly. This is a prison. A staff member entered. A woman with a hard face and navy scrubs. You're awake. Good. Here's your schedule. She handed me a laminated sheet. Every hour from 6 in the morning to 10 at night was accounted for. Group therapy. Supervised meals. Behavioral education. Even bathroom time was scheduled. What happens if I don't follow the schedule? I asked. Consequences, she said simply. And you don't want consequences. In the first few days, I tried to resist. I demanded to speak with a lawyer. I demanded to use a phone. I told every staff member who would listen that I didn't belong here, that my parents had framed me. But nobody believed me. Every teenager here said they didn't belong. One night, after I refused to take my medication, sedatives I didn't need, 2 staff members dragged me to a room they called the reflection room. They strapped me into a chair for 6 hours. No water, no bathroom, just 4 white walls and the sound of fluorescent lights humming. After that, I learned. Comply. Survive. Wait. In my 3rd week, I met Nina Rodriguez. She was 19, just a year older than me, and she'd been at Meadowbrook for 8 months. She was there because her parents didn't approve of her boyfriend. That was it. In the world of the troubled teen industry, that was enough. This place is hell, Nina whispered during lunch when the staff weren't listening. But it's not forever. Once you turn 18, if you have money of your own, you can leave. I'm already 18, I said. And I did have money, but now I couldn't finish the sentence. Nina stared at me. They took it. How? Conservatorship. I wiped away tears. My parents convinced a court I was mentally ill. I don't know how to prove I'm not. Nina bit her lip. You have to get out of here, Kalira. You can't wait for them to release you. You have to escape. Escape? How? I looked around. Every door was locked. Every window had bars. Staff counted us every hour. I've been watching, Nina said. There's a convenience store nearby. Staff get careless at night. If you can get out of the building, you could disappear. And go where? I don't have money. I don't know anyone. Nina squeezed my hand. There are places, shelters, places that help people who escape from facilities like this. They won't send you back. Why haven't you escaped? I asked. Because I have no reason to. Nina's voice was soft. My family abandoned me. But you have something to fight for. You have a chance. For 2 weeks, Nina and I planned. We learned the shift changes. We learned which staff member fell asleep on duty. We learned that the kitchen door had a broken lock. If you kicked it at just the right angle, it would pop open. We picked a moonless night in late March. Perfect. At 2 a.m, I crept out of my room. Nina had already locked the on-duty staff member in the supply closet. Accident with the lock. We had maybe 10 minutes before anyone noticed. We ran to the kitchen, to the Yixatzaz. Nina kicked the door once. Twice. On the 3rd kick, it released with a click. Go, Nina urged. I ran outside. The March air cut like knives. I wore only a thin t-shirt and sweatpants. I ran through the woods surrounding Meadowbrook, branches scratching my face, roots tripping me. I heard sirens behind me. They'd discovered I was gone. Keep running. Don't look back. After 20 minutes, I reached a road. And there, like a beacon, was a small convenience store, exactly where Nina said it would be. I stumbled inside, shaking uncontrollably. The store manager, a tall, thin man with a gray beard, stared at me. Jesus, are you okay? Please, I gasped. Don't call Meadowbrook. Don't send me back. My parents. I collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. The man looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. I won't call anyone, but you can't stay here. They'll come looking. I know. I just need a phone. One call. He handed me his cell phone. I stared at it, my mind blank. I didn't know anyone's number. I had no friends. My family had betrayed me. Then I remembered. William Shepard, the attorney. I remembered his number from the business card he'd given me at the will reading. I dialed with trembling fingers. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Please pick up, please. William Shepard speaking. His voice was hoarse, sleepy. Mr. Shepard, this is Kalira Barnes. I need help. Within an hour, William Shepard arrived at the convenience store, but he didn't come alone. Kalira, this is Margaret Sullivan, he introduced. A woman in her 60s stepped out of the passenger seat. She had short silver hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to read my entire story in a single glance. Call me Maggie, she said. William called me. He thought I might be able to help. Who are you? I asked, my voice still shaking from cold and exhaustion. I'm a retired attorney. I specialized in family law and children's rights. Maggie draped her coat over my shoulders. And from what William told me, your parents just committed one of the most egregious acts of fraud I've ever heard of. So we can sue them? Hope flared in my chest for the first time in months. We can get the trust fund back? Maggie and William exchanged a look. It's more complicated than that, William said slowly. The conservatorship order is technically legal. They had a doctor testify. They had evidence, however fabricated. But it's all lies. I know, William said gently. But the legal system moves slowly. To overturn the conservatorship, we need to prove fraud. That means building a case. And that will take time. How long? Months, maybe years. William looked down. And in the meantime, your parents have legal access to the trust fund. I felt hope crumble. So, I've lost everything. Not everything. Maggie's voice was firm. You've lost control for now. But you haven't been defeated. Not if you don't let them win. How? I whispered. I have nothing. No money. Nowhere to go. You have me, Maggie said. And I have an idea. Maggie drove me to her home, a modest house in the Hartford suburbs. It wasn't the Whitmore estate, but it was warm. It was safe. Here's the plan, Maggie said, making tea in her kitchen. We don't sue. Not yet. Why not? Because your parents are expecting that. They have attorneys. They have Dr. Hayes ready to testify again. If we sue now, we'll lose. Maggie sipped her tea. But there's one weapon they can't fight. Time and their own self-destruction. What do you mean? Rowan and Isolde are spenders. They're gamblers. They're addicts. William told me about the debts, the unpaid loans. Maggie leaned forward. What do you think will happen when they suddenly have $2 million? I frowned. Then it hit me. They'll spend it all. Exactly. They'll invest stupidly. They'll get scammed. They'll gamble it away. Maggie nodded. And when they're bankrupt, when they've lost your grandfather's house, when they're drowning in debt, that's when you strike. But how will I shook my head. I don't even have a high school diploma. Then we'll get you one. Maggie opened her laptop. You'll get your GED. You'll study at community college. You'll learn law, finance, real estate. And when the time comes, when your parents have dug their own grave deep enough, you'll be the one to bury them. That will take years. Maybe 5, maybe 10. Maggie looked into my eyes. But if you want to win, you have to be patient. You have to be strong. And you have to be willing to play the long game. I looked down at my hands, scarred from Meadowbrook, fingers bruised from the escape. I thought about my grandfather, about his letter. Be patient. Okay, I said. I'll do it. In the months that followed, Kalira Barnes, legally, disappeared. Rowan and Isolde reported to police that I'd escaped from Meadowbrook. They portrayed me as a dangerous, mentally ill patient on the run. But because I was 18, police didn't prioritize the case. No Amber Alert, no nationwide search. Just another girl lost in the system. But I wasn't lost. I was just hidden. Maggie helped me get false documentation. Not complete fraud, just an alias. Callie Whitmore. Using my grandfather's last name, not Barnes. Close enough to remember who I was, but far enough to avoid triggering alerts. I worked at Maggie's law office as an administrative assistant. Paid in cash, no official tax records. A small violation Maggie was willing to accept to protect me. I studied for my GED at night. I passed in 3 months. By September, just months after my escape, I enrolled at Hartford Community College. Major: finance. My real education was about to begin. The first year was survival. I worked at Maggie's office during the day, filing documents, answering phones, making coffee for clients. At night, I attended classes at Hartford Community College. Finance 101. Introduction to Business Law. Accounting Fundamentals. Every class felt like arming myself for a war I knew was coming. Maggie paid me $300 a week in cash. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a room in her house, food, and textbooks. More importantly, it kept me invisible. No tax records meant no paper trail. No paper trail meant my parents couldn't find me. Not that they were looking very hard. One evening in late autumn, about 6 months after my escape, Maggie called me into her study. She had papers spread across her desk, printed articles, financial documents, photographs. "I have been doing some research," she said, gesturing for me to sit. "On your parents." My stomach tightened. "And?" "They're spending exactly as we predicted. Fast." She slid a printout across the desk. "This is from William Shepard. He's been monitoring the trust fund account. He still has limited access as the executor of your grandfather's will." I looked at the numbers. In just 6 months, the balance had dropped from $2 million to $1.4 million. $600,000 gone. "Where did it go?" I asked. Maggie pulled out another document. "Gambling losses. $150,000 at Atlantic City casinos. Your father has a platinum card there now. They comp his rooms." She slid over another paper. "Your mother bought a Mercedes S-Class. $120,000. Cash. They're burning through it. Like it's nothing." Maggie leaned back. "But here's what's interesting. They're not just spending, they're investing. Or trying to." She showed me another document. A contract for a luxury resort development in Turks and Caicos. Rowan and Isolde had put $400,000 into it. "Is it legitimate?" I asked. "On paper, yes, but I had a colleague look into it. The developer has a history of projects that go nowhere. This one's already behind schedule and over budget." Maggie tapped the page. "I give it 2 years before it collapses. They'll lose every penny." I stared at the documents, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Not quite satisfaction, not quite grief, something in between. How long before the trust fund runs dry? At this rate, 2 years, maybe less. Maggie closed the folder. "The question is, what do you want to do when that happens?" I looked up at her. "I want to be ready. I want to be in a position where, when they fall, I'm the one standing above them." "Then you need more than a community college degree," Maggie said. "You need credentials, real expertise. You need to become someone they would never recognize." "How long will that take?" Years. Maggie met my eyes. 5, maybe 10. Can you be patient that long? I thought about my grandfather's letter, about the 10 hours I'd spent strapped to a chair in Meadowbrook's reflection room, about watching my parents walk into that courtroom with manufactured tears and fabricated evidence. I can be patient, I said. I can be patient forever if that's what it takes. The next 4 years passed in a blur of textbooks, exams, and certifications. I finished my associate degree in finance in the spring after my escape, graduating with a perfect 4.0. My professors noticed. Dr. Ellen Park, who taught corporate finance, pulled me aside after class one afternoon in my final semester. "Miss Whitmore," she said. That was the name I went by now, Callie Whitmore. "Your performance has been exceptional. Have you considered transferring to a 4-year university?" "I can't afford it," I said, which was true. "I need to work." "There are scholarships, programs. With your grades, you could get into any business school in Connecticut." But I shook my head. Applying to 4-year schools would require parent verification, financial records. It would leave a trail, and I couldn't risk my parents discovering where I was. Not yet. Instead, I accumulated certifications like weapons, real estate license, securities license, both Series 7 and 63. Each one was a tool. Each one brought me closer to the industry I needed to infiltrate. Maggie watched my progress with quiet pride. She started giving me real work. Not just filing and coffee, but actual legal tasks. Handling estate documents, processing debt settlements, negotiating foreclosure agreements, lessons you couldn't learn in any classroom. "You're a natural at this," she said one evening, reviewing a contract I'd drafted. "Your grandfather would be proud." I didn't answer. I just stared out the window into the darkness, wondering if somewhere, somehow, he knew I was still fighting. But while I was building myself up, Rowan and Isolde were tearing themselves down. Maggie tracked their decline with meticulous detail. She compiled everything into a folder she called The Barnes Downfall, a chronicle of financial destruction. By the end of my second year, the trust fund was empty. $2 million. Gone in less than 24 months. The Turks and Caicos resort project had collapsed, exactly as predicted. The developer had vanished with everyone's money. Rowan had lost another 100,000 at the casinos. Isolde had bought designer clothes, jewelry, a second car. But they weren't done yet. With the trust fund drained, they mortgaged the Whitmore estate. My grandfather's house, the one he'd built with his own hands, the one he'd filled with 40 years of memories, became collateral for a $500,000 loan. "What are they using the money for?" I asked Maggie when she showed me the documents. "Best guess? Trying to dig themselves out of debt. They owe money to casinos, credit card companies, the IRS. They're juggling debts with more debt." She closed the folder. "It's a death spiral. They just don't know it yet." I felt nothing. The girl who used to love her parents, the girl who remembered her father lifting her onto his shoulders at a carnival, who remembered her mother teaching her to braid hair, that girl was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone patient, someone calculating. In the fall, 4 years after my escape, I applied for a job at Sterling Recovery Group, a small firm in Manhattan that specialized in distressed debt. It was a long shot. I had credentials but no formal 4-year degree, no prestigious internships. Just a resume full of certifications and a recommendation letter from Maggie Sullivan, retired attorney. I sent out 47 applications, 46 rejections. But Sterling Recovery Group called me in for an interview. The office was small, just 20 employees crammed into a Soho building. The CEO, a sharp-eyed woman named Catherine Reed, interviewed me herself. "Your resume is unusual," she said, studying it. "You have a real estate license, securities licenses, but no bachelor's degree. Why?" I needed to work, I said simply. College wasn't an option, so I learned what I needed to learn and got certified in it. And you want to work in debt recovery because… I met her eyes. Because debt is power. The person who owns the debt controls everything. They control the timeline, the terms, the outcome. I want to understand that power. Catherine studied me for a long moment. Then she smiled. When can you start? Sterling Recovery Group became my graduate school. I learned every aspect of the debt market: how to source distressed loans, how to negotiate with creditors, how to structure buyback deals, how to handle collateral. The work was ruthless. We bought people's debts for pennies on the dollar, then pursued collection. We foreclosed on homes. We seized assets. We ruined lives. At first, it made me sick, but then I remembered. This was exactly what I needed to do to my parents. And if I was going to do it effectively, I needed to learn how to be ruthless without remorse. I threw myself into the work with single-minded intensity. Within a year, I was the highest performing specialist at Sterling. Within 2 years, I was managing a team. Within 3 years, I was a director. My salary climbed. 45,000 became 80,000. 80 became 120. 120 became 180, plus bonuses and equity stakes in deals. By the time I turned 26, I had saved $300,000. Not enough to buy back my inheritance, but enough to do something else. Enough to start my own firm. I left Sterling Recovery in the summer, 8 years after my escape from Meadowbrook. Catherine Reed wasn't happy to lose me, but she understood. You're going to be competition now, she said when I gave my notice. Only if you're bidding on the same assets, I replied. She smiled. What are you calling your firm? Whitmore Capital Recovery. Her eyebrows rose. Using your real name? Is that wise? It's my grandfather's name, I said. The name my parents tried to erase. I'm taking it back. Whitmore Capital Recovery was tiny at first. Just me, an assistant named Jordan Blake, and a financial analyst I'd worked with at Sterling who wanted to join something new. We rented a small office on the 30th floor of a Manhattan high-rise with a view of the Hudson River. The work was the same as Sterling, buying and selling distressed debt. But now I controlled which debts we pursued, and I had a very specific portfolio in mind. I started tracking every creditor Rowan and Isolde owed money to. It wasn't difficult. Bankruptcy filings are public records. I knew every bank, every credit card company, every loan servicer they'd defaulted on. My parents had filed for bankruptcy protection 2 years earlier, right around the time I joined Sterling. They'd managed to keep the Whitmore estate through the bankruptcy, barely, by working out a payment plan with the mortgage holder. But they'd accumulated a constellation of other debts: credit cards, personal loans, a failed business venture, even casino markers. And now those debts were assets I could buy. Jordan came into my office one morning in late winter with a spreadsheet. We'd been in business for 6 months. I've mapped out all the Barnes debt that's currently on the market, he said, turning his laptop toward me. Credit card debt from Capital One, $200,000. Personal loans from Marcus by Goldman Sachs, $150,000. A failed business loan from Wells Fargo, $300,000. And casino debt from Atlantic City, $100,000. What are the asking prices? 40 to 60 cents on the dollar. The creditors want these off their books. The Barneses are in default and not responding to collection attempts. I studied the numbers. $750,000 in debt. If I bought it all at 50 cents on the dollar, it would cost me $375,000. I had enough. Make the offers, I said. But use shell companies, different LLCs for each purchase. I don't want anything tracing back to Whitmore Capital directly. Got it. Jordan paused. Boss, can I ask, why are we targeting these specific debtors? Because they're connected to a larger asset I want, I said. And when we've collected enough of their debt, we'll have leverage to take it. Over the next year and a half, I quietly bought up every piece of Rowan and Isolda's debt that hit the secondary market. Credit cards, personal loans, business failures, gambling debts. Piece by piece, I assembled ownership of their financial ruin. But the crown jewel, the one thing I wanted most, remained out of reach. The mortgage on the Whitmore estate, First National Bank of Connecticut still held it. And they weren't selling. Yet. Maggie kept me updated on my parents' situation. It was grim. They were behind on every payment. The house was falling apart. They couldn't afford basic maintenance. The lawn grew wild, paint peeled. Windows stayed dirty. They're trying to hang on, Maggie told me over dinner one evening. But they can't. The mortgage payment is $4,000 a month. They're 3 months behind. The bank is starting foreclosure proceedings. When? Soon. Maybe by autumn. I felt something shift in my chest. Not excitement exactly. More like the feeling of watching a long-planned machine finally start to move. Tell me when the bank officially forecloses, I said. I want to know the moment that property goes to auction. The call came on a rainy October morning, exactly 10 years after my grandfather's will was read. Kalira, Maggie's voice was careful on the phone. First National just filed foreclosure papers. The Whitmore estate is going to auction in 30 days. What's the opening bid? $900,000. That's what's left on the mortgage. I did the math in my head. I had $800,000 in liquid capital. Not quite enough, but I had assets. The debt portfolio I'd been building. I could leverage that. I could get a bridge loan from Sterling's old investors. I need you to set up a bidding entity, I said. Another LLC, totally separate from Whitmore Capital. Can you do that? Of course. What are you planning? I'm planning to buy my childhood home. I looked out my office window at the Manhattan skyline. Rain streaked the glass. And then I'm going to tell my parents who really owns it. Jordan came into my office a week later with news. We have a problem, he said. Or maybe an opportunity. Your father just emailed our general contact address. He handed me his tablet. I read the email. Subject: Urgent meeting request. Whitmore Estate. Dear Whitmore Capital Recovery, my name is Rowan Barnes, current owner of the property at 15 Whitmore Lane. I've received your foreclosure notice and would like to discuss payment options. I believe we can reach a reasonable agreement that avoids auction. Please let me know when it would be convenient to meet. Regards, Rowan Barnes. I read it 3 times. Each time I felt something harden in my chest. Anger, disgust, and something else. Something like hope. He doesn't know it's me. What do you want me to do? Jordan asked. Schedule a meeting, I said. Here, at our office, November 15th. Jordan checked his calendar. That's your birthday. I know, I said quietly. That's exactly the point. Before the meeting, I needed to see it one more time. I drove to Connecticut alone on a cold November morning. Rain fell steadily, the same kind of rain that had fallen the day the will was read, the day I was dragged to court, the day my life was stolen. I parked a block away from the Whitmore estate and looked at it through the rain-streaked windshield. The house was a ghost. The lawn was overgrown with weeds, paint peeled from the shutters. Windows were grimy and cracked. My grandfather had maintained this place like a living museum. Rowan and Isolda had let it rot in 10 years. I saw a man emerge from the back door. Rowan. He was older now, thinner. His hair was graying and sparse. He hunched as he walked, carrying a trash bag to the curb. I stared at him, emotions churning. I remembered being 7 and him lifting me onto his shoulders at a fairground. I remembered being 10 and him teaching me poker. There was a time, a brief time, when he seemed like a good father. But then my grandfather's money came, and everything changed. "You're not my daughter," he'd said that day. "You're an obstacle." I started the car and drove away. I'd seen enough. On the morning of November 15th, my 28th birthday, I woke up early in my Manhattan apartment. I put on my best suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. I pinned my hair back severely. I wore thin-framed glasses. I looked in the mirror. The girl who'd been dragged out of her house in pajamas 10 years ago was gone. In her place stood someone else. Someone powerful. Someone who'd built herself from nothing. Someone ready for war. At 9:30, Jordan came to my office. "They're here, in the conference room." "How do they look?" "Nervous. Your mother keeps looking around at everything. Your father's hands are shaking." "Give them coffee, make them comfortable. I'll be there in 5 minutes." Jordan left. I stood at my window, looking out at the Hudson River, taking slow breaths. This was it. 10 years of planning. 10 years of patience. 10 years of survival. Time to finish it. I walked into the conference room at exactly 9:45. Rowan and Isolde sat in leather chairs, both looking diminished. Rowan wore a suit that was too big for him. He'd lost weight. Isolde's designer clothes were years out of date. They both looked older than they should, worn down by a decade of bad decisions. "Mr. Barnes, Mrs. Barnes," I said, my voice calm and controlled. "Thank you for coming. I'm the CEO of Whitmore Capital Recovery." I sat down across from them without offering a handshake. "We appreciate you meeting with us," Rowan began. "We'd like to work out a payment plan." "There is no payment plan," I cut him off. "You owe $1,650,000. Full payment, or we foreclose." "But that's impossible!" Isolde burst out. "We can pay over time." "You've had 10 years to pay over time," I said. "You chose not to." Rowan leaned forward. "Who are you?" "I want to speak to someone with authority." "I have the authority, Mr. Barnes." I removed my glasses slowly, cleaning them with a cloth. "In fact, I'm the only one with authority." I set my glasses on the table and looked directly into Rowan's eyes. "Hello, Father." Silence. Rowan stared. Isolde stood so abruptly her chair fell backward. "No," Isolde whispered. "That's not possible." "Kalira?" Rowan's voice was hoarse. "Nobody's called me that in 10 years, I said calmly. "Most people call me CEO Whitmore now, but you can call me your creditor." "How?" Isolde shook her head. "You disappeared. We thought you were dead? Homeless? Living in a ditch somewhere?" I smiled coldly. "No, I was building this." I pulled a thick folder from my briefcase and dropped it on the table. It fell open, revealing the first page. Debt summary. Rowan and Isolde Barnes. Total outstanding debt, $1,650,000. Creditor Whitmore Capital Recovery, LLC. Owner Kalira M. Barnes Rowan stared at the document, his face draining of color. "You bought our debt?" "Every single dollar," I confirmed. "Your credit cards, your personal loans, your business failures, even your casino markers, Father." I pulled out another page, placing it on top. And of course, the mortgage on the Whitmore estate. "But that's... you can't," Rowan stammered. "I can, and I did." I leaned forward. "Do you want to know the best part? I bought all of it cheap. Credit cards, 60 cents on the dollar. The mortgage, 60 cents on the dollar. I spent less than $1 million to buy your entire financial life." Isolde was trembling. "You can't do this. We're your parents." "You were my parents." I cut her off, my voice like steel. Until you decided $2 million was worth more than your daughter. You drugged me. You framed me. You locked me in a facility and left me to rot. We thought, Rowan's voice broke. We thought you needed help. Don't. I slammed my hand on the table. My voice didn't rise, but it carried force that made them both flinch. Don't lie. Not to me. Not now. I stood up, walking around the table, each step deliberate. You didn't think I needed help. You thought I was in your way. Grandfather left me everything because he knew. He knew you would waste it. He was wrong, Rowan tried. We invested. You gambled, I corrected. You spent money on stupid things. You lived like royalty while I was trying to survive. I stopped behind their chairs, my voice dropping to something soft but cold. You told me I wasn't mentally fit to keep grandfather's money. That I was too unstable, too dangerous. Turns out, I was the only person in this family fit to handle it. Isolde turned in her chair. So what now? You're going to kick us out of our home? Exactly. I returned to my seat, sitting with perfect calm. You have 30 days to vacate. After that, the property is mine. We have nowhere to go, Rowan said quietly. Then you should have thought about that 10 years ago. My voice was unmoved. You made your choice. Now, you live with it. Rowan stared at the table for a long moment. Then he looked up, his eyes red. What happened to you, Kalara? You used to be... What? I interrupted. Sweet? Trusting? Easy to manipulate? I stood. She died in Meadowbrook, the day you had me strapped to a chair for 6 hours, the day I realized my own parents were monsters. I walked to the door, then paused. 30 days. Jordan will send you the eviction paperwork. Kalara, Isolde's voice cracked. Please. I opened the door without looking back. It's CEO Whitmore. You lost the right to call me your daughter 10 years ago. I left them sitting in the conference room, stunned and broken. And I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No victory. Just the cold, empty knowledge that justice, even when served perfectly, doesn't heal the wounds that made it necessary. The week after the confrontation, I couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt, I felt none of that, but because my mind wouldn't stop replaying the moment. The look on Rowan's face when he realized who I was. The way Isolde's hands had trembled. The absolute silence that followed my revelation. I'd imagined that moment for 10 years. In my imagination, it was triumphant, victorious, sweet. In reality, it was just hollow. Jordan noticed. He brought me coffee on a gray November morning, setting it on my desk carefully. You okay, boss? I'm fine. You don't look fine. You look like you haven't slept in days. I turned from the window. What did you expect? That I'd be celebrating? Maybe? He sat down across from me. You just won. After everything they did to you, you got justice. That's supposed to feel good. It doesn't feel like anything, I admitted. I thought it would. I thought when I finally faced them, when I finally took everything from them the way they took everything from me, I'd feel something. Relief, satisfaction, peace. But you don't. No. I sipped the coffee. It was bitter. I just feel empty. Jordan was quiet for a moment. Maybe that's the point. Maybe revenge isn't supposed to make you feel good. Maybe it's just supposed to make you feel finished. Am I finished? I asked. Are you? I wasn't, because Rowan didn't give up easily. Over the next week, he tried everything. He hired an attorney to sue Whitmore Capital. The case was dismissed within days. Our ownership of the debt was completely legal. He contacted media outlets trying to spin a story about a father trying to help his mentally ill daughter. Nobody ran it. The story of a wealthy family losing their estate to their own daughter after committing conservatorship fraud? That wasn't sympathetic. That was karma. He even showed up at my office building one afternoon, trying to get past security. I watched on the lobby cameras as 2 guards escorted him out, his voice rising in desperation. "Kalira, please, I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes, please." I turned off the monitor. I didn't go down. But then, on a cold December morning, 2 weeks after the confrontation, my assistant buzzed me. "CEO Whitmore, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. Her name is Isolde Barnes." I stared at the phone. Part of me wanted to say no, to have her removed. But a smaller part, the part that still remembered being 7 years old and having my mother braid my hair, was curious. "Send her in." Isolde walked into my office alone. No Rowan, no attorney. She wore a coat that had been expensive once, but was now worn at the elbows. Her makeup didn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes. "Thank you for seeing me," she said quietly. I didn't invite her to sit. "What do you want?" She stood in the middle of the room, looking smaller than I remembered. "I'm not here to beg. I'm not here to ask for mercy. I know we don't deserve that." "Then why are you here?" I wanted to explain. She met my eyes. "I know that won't change anything. I know it won't fix what we did. But I need you to understand. It wasn't always like this. I did love you once." I laughed, a bitter sound. "You have a strange way of showing love. After your grandfather left you that money." She shook her head. "It changed everything. We owed so many people, dangerous people, and Theodore just cut us out completely. Because he knew you'd waste it." I stepped closer. "He knew you'd gamble it. He knew you'd lose it. That's why he gave it to me, to protect it from you." "And he was right," Isolde whispered. Tears formed in her eyes. "We lost all of it, in 2 years. We tried to invest, we tried to make it grow, but we just made everything worse. So what do you want from me now? Sympathy?" "No." She wiped her eyes. "I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean anything. I know it doesn't change what we did, but I'm sorry." I looked at the woman who'd given birth to me, who'd taught me to read, who'd sung me lullabies when I was small. Now she was just a stranger with familiar features. I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just emptiness. "You have 30 days, I said. "Use them wisely." She nodded, turning to leave. At the door, she paused. "Your grandfather would be proud of you, of what you've become." "He'd be disappointed in me," I said. "He would have wanted me to forgive you." "Can you?" I didn't answer. After a long moment, she left. December 15th arrived cold and gray. I stood outside the Whitmore estate as the moving crew arrived. Rain fell in a steady drizzle, the same weather that had marked every major turning point in my life. The day the will was read. The day I was dragged to court. The day I escaped Meadowbrook. Now, the day I took back what was mine. Rowan and Isolde emerged from the house carrying bags. Not many. Most of their possessions had been sold over the years to pay debts. What remained fit in the back of an old Honda Civic. Not the Mercedes Isolde had bought with my inheritance. They saw me standing there. For a moment, none of us moved. Then Rowan walked over, his steps slow and tired. Up close, he looked even older, lines carved deep around his mouth, gray stubble on his jaw. "Where will you go?" I asked. Not because I cared, but because I was curious. "We have an apartment, in Hartford, 1 bedroom. His voice was rough. It's not much, but it's what we can afford now. I nodded. That's more than some people have. More than you had, he said quietly. When we threw you out. The admission hung between us. An acknowledgement, finally, of what they'd done. I didn't do this to hurt you, I said. I did this to take back what belonged to me. We know. Isolde had joined us, standing beside Rowan. She looked up at the house, the place she'd lived for 20 years. Your grandfather would be proud of you. You already said that, I replied. Because it's true. She met my eyes. You survived everything we did to you. You built yourself up from nothing. You won. That takes strength we never had. Rowan reached out, as if to touch my arm, then thought better of it. His hand fell. Can you ever forgive us? I looked at them both, these people who'd given me life, then tried to destroy it. I felt nothing. No hate, no love, just a vast, empty distance. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday, but not today. They nodded, accepting that. They climbed into their Honda and drove away, not looking back. I watched them disappear down the tree-lined street, then turned to face the house. My house. My grandfather's house. Mine. The restoration of the Whitmore estate took 3 months. I hired the best contractors in Connecticut. They stripped away 10 years of neglect, replaced rotted wood, repainted every surface, restored the gardens, fixed the plumbing, updated the electrical. I went through my grandfather's old photographs, recreating the house exactly as it had been when he was alive. The roses, the oak bookshelves in the study, the chandelier in the dining room, everything. Maggie came by one afternoon in late winter, walking through the restored rooms with wonder. It's beautiful, she said, just like I remember it from the photos. I wanted it to be right, I said. He spent 40 years building this place. I couldn't let it stay ruined. We stood in the study, my grandfather's favorite room, now mine. I'd hung his portrait above the fireplace. He gazed down with kind eyes, the slight smile he always had when he looked at me. What will you do with it? Maggie asked. Will you live here? Sometimes, I said. But I want it to be more than just a house. I want it to mean something. What do you mean? I pulled out a folder from the desk. I've been working on something. A trust fund. Not like the one grandfather left me. Something different. Maggie opened the folder, reading. Her eyes widened. Kalyra, this is incredible. I'm calling it the Theodore Whitmore Freedom Fund, I explained. It's for teenagers and young adults who've been wrongfully committed to facilities like Meadowbrook. Money for legal fees, counseling, education, so they don't have to fight alone like I did. How much are you seeding it with? $500,000 to start. More as Whitmore Capital grows. I looked at my grandfather's portrait. He wanted me to do something good with his money. This feels right. Maggie hugged me. Something she rarely did. He would love this. He really would. But there was still one piece of unfinished business. Dr. Preston Hayes, the psychiatrist who'd testified against me, who'd claimed to have treated me when we'd never met, who'd been paid by my parents to lie under oath. He was still practicing, still had his license, still worked with the same facility system that had imprisoned me. That couldn't stand. I hired a private investigator. It took 2 months, but she found everything. Bank records showing payments from Rowan to Hayes. Emails coordinating testimony. Records of at least 6 other cases where Hayes had testified for conservatorship proceedings. Always for a fee, always with minimal actual patient contact. I compiled it all into a complaint and filed it with the Connecticut Medical Board. The investigation took 8 months, but in the end, Dr. Preston Hayes lost his medical license. Permanently. I didn't feel victorious when I got the news. I just felt like I'd closed a door that should have been closed a long time ago. Spring came to Connecticut with a riot of flowers. The roses my grandfather had planted bloomed again, red and white and pink, filling the garden with perfume. I spent my weekends there, away from Manhattan, working in the garden with my hands in the soil. One Saturday morning in April, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Kalira? The voice was hesitant, familiar. It's Nina Rodriguez. I sat up straight. Nina, from Meadowbrook. The girl who'd helped me escape, who I hadn't heard from in 10 years. Nina? How did you find me? It wasn't easy, but I saw your name attached to that Freedom Fund, the one for kids getting out of facilities. I thought, maybe it was you. She paused. Is it really you? It's really me. I can't believe it. Her voice was thick with emotion. When you escaped, I never knew what happened to you. I hoped you made it, but I didn't know. And now you're a CEO? You started a fund? I did, I said. And Nina, I never thanked you for helping me that night. You gave me a chance when I had nothing. You would have done the same for me. She was quiet for a moment. The fund you started, it's already helping people. I work with foster kids now, and 3 of them have gotten support from your foundation. You're changing lives, Kalira. We talked for an hour. She told me about her life, how she'd gotten out of Meadowbrook, gotten her degree, become a social worker. I told her about the decade I'd spent building myself back up, about facing my parents, about taking back what was mine. You won, she said at the end. You really won. I survived, I corrected. That's not quite the same thing. It's better, she said. Winning is about beating someone else. Surviving is about saving yourself. On a warm morning in mid-May, exactly 10 years and 6 months after my grandfather's funeral, I woke up in my childhood bedroom at the Whitmore estate. I walked downstairs to the kitchen, made coffee, and carried it out to the garden. The roses were in full bloom. Birds sang in the oak trees. The morning sun turned everything gold. I sat on the bench where my grandfather used to sit, where I'd found him that terrible day 10 years ago. I opened the drawer of the small garden table and pulled out something I'd kept for a decade, his letter. I unfolded the worn paper and read it again. Be wise, Kalira. Be patient. Don't let anyone, not even your parents, convince you that you don't deserve this. You deserve everything, and I will always be proud of you. I folded the letter carefully and looked around the garden. Everything he'd built was still here. The house, the roses, the legacy. And I'd saved it. Not just saved it, I'd expanded it. The Freedom Fund was helping dozens of kids. Whitmore Capital was thriving. I'd taken what my parents tried to destroy and made it something better. I did it, Grandpa, I whispered to the morning air. I took it all back. A breeze rustled the roses, carrying their scent, and for just a moment, I could have sworn I felt his hand on my shoulder, the way he used to rest it there when I was small. His silent way of saying he was proud. 1 year later, Jordan found me in my Manhattan office on a crisp November morning, 1 year after the confrontation with my parents. You have mail, he said, handing me an envelope. Hand-delivered, no return address. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single card, simple, cream-colored paper with handwritten text. Dear Kalira, we saw the article about the Freedom Fund in the Hartford Courant. We read about the kids you're helping, the lives you're changing. We wanted you to know we're proud of what you've built. Not because we have any right to be, but because it's true. We know we don't deserve forgiveness. We know what we did was unforgivable. But if there's ever a time when you're ready to talk, not as creditor and debtor, but as people, we would like that. Until then, know that we're sorry. Every day. For everything. R and I. I read it twice, then I set it on my desk, next to a photograph of my grandfather. "What will you do?" Jordan asked. I looked at the letter for a long moment. Then I opened my desk drawer and placed it inside, carefully, next to other important documents. "Nothing," I said. "Not today. Maybe not ever. But I'll keep it. Because someday, maybe, I might be ready to open that door. But it has to be on my terms. In my time. And if that time never comes, then it never comes." I stood looking out at the Manhattan skyline. I spent 10 years fighting to get back what they took from me. I won. But that doesn't mean I owe them forgiveness. That's not how healing works. Jordan nodded. "Fair enough. So what's next for you?" I smiled. A real smile. Maybe the first genuinely happy one I'd had in years. "I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Building Whitmore Capital. Growing the Freedom Fund. Helping kids who are trapped the way I was trapped. And living my life the way Grandpa wanted me to. With strength, with wisdom, and without letting anyone make me feel like I don't deserve to be here." Sounds like a good plan. It's the only plan. I picked up my coffee, toasting the window. "To survival." "To survival," Jordan echoed. I went back to Connecticut that weekend. The Whitmore estate was hosting its first annual fundraiser for the Freedom Fund. The gardens were decorated with lights. Tables were set up on the lawn. 200 people had come. Donors, advocates, former facility residents who'd been helped by the fund, social workers like Nina. I stood on the back terrace in a navy dress, watching the party. Maggie found me there, handing me a glass of champagne. "Quite a turnout," she said. "It's more than I expected," I admitted. "When I started this, I thought maybe we'd help a handful of kids. Now we're looking at helping hundreds." "Your grandfather would be over the moon." Maggie clinked her glass against mine. "You took his legacy and made it something beautiful." "I just did what he would have wanted." "No." Maggie shook her head. "You did what you wanted. You took the pain of what happened to you and transformed it into something that helps others. That's not your grandfather's legacy. That's yours." I felt tears prick my eyes, happy tears for once. "Thank you, Maggie. For everything. For saving me. For believing in me. For teaching me how to fight." "You didn't need me to teach you that," she said. "You already knew how. You just needed someone to remind you that you were strong enough." At the end of the night, after the guests had gone and the catering staff had cleaned up, I walked through the empty house alone. I stopped in my grandfather's study. My study now. I'd framed his letter and hung it on the wall beside his portrait. The two most important things he'd left me. His words and his face. Both watching over me. I sat at his desk, my desk, and opened my laptop. I had emails to answer, deals to review, fund applications to process. The work of building something meaningful never stopped. But before I started, I did something I'd been doing every day for 10 years. I opened a document on my computer, a journal I'd been keeping since Meadowbrook. 10 years of entries, 10 years of survival, planning, fighting, winning. I added a new entry. November 15th, 2025. Age 29. 10 years exactly since the confrontation. 10 years since I looked my parents in the eye and told them I'd won. Tonight, I hosted a fundraiser that raised $300,000 for kids who need help escaping facilities like the one that held me. Next month, we're opening a legal clinic specifically for conservatorship abuse cases. Next year, we're planning to expand nationally. I don't know if I'll ever forgive Rowan and Isolde. I don't know if I need to. Some wounds are too deep for forgiveness. Some betrayals are too fundamental. But I know this. I survived. I won. And I took the worst thing that ever happened to me and turned it into something that helps other people survive too. Grandpa was right. I deserved everything. And now I'm making sure other kids know they deserve everything too. I'm not the girl they locked away anymore. I'm not even the CEO who foreclosed on them. I'm something else now. I'm free. Finally, truly free. And that's the best revenge of all. I saved the entry and closed the laptop. Through the window, I could see the garden, the roses my grandfather had planted, the oak trees, the stars. I thought about the girl I'd been 10 years ago, 17, scared, broken by betrayal. I thought about the woman I'd become, strong, successful, capable of mercy, but not weak enough to be manipulated again. I thought about my parents, living in their one-bedroom apartment, living with the consequences of their choices. And I thought about my grandfather, wherever he was, watching me carry forward his legacy in ways he never could have imagined. I hope you're proud, Grandpa, I whispered to the empty room. Because I am. For the first time in 10 years, I'm proud of who I've become. The house was silent, but somehow I felt like he'd heard me, and that was enough. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this story. It's been a long journey, 10 years condensed into one telling. But I hope it showed you that survival isn't just about living through something terrible. It's about what you build afterward. It's about taking the worst moment of your life and refusing to let it be the last word. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that even when everything is taken from you, you still have the power to rebuild, please hit that subscribe button. There are more stories like this, more journeys of survival and strength and justice, and I'd love to share them with you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are stronger than whatever tried to break you. You deserve everything. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And if you're fighting your own battle right now, keep fighting. You're worth it.